on this tape we have two interviews. We have one interview is with Eugene Sternberg. He's one of the original architects that did the site planning for Arapahoe Acres, and he also designed quite a few homes in the neighborhood. And then we have Clyde Mannon that Edward Hawkins brought in as his general contractor in Arapahoe Acres. And Eugene Sternberg's interview takes place up at his residence in Evergreen, and Mr. Mannon's interview takes place at his residence in Golden, Colorado.
Invited lots of people, and he said, whatever her name was, Mrs. Jones, I cannot come in until you will put that chair back in the same place. All right, I'll do it. She went up, took the chair, put it back into that same place. Now that kind of craziness.
Specific questions at the end. We'll plan to ask specific questions. How does that
Sure,
sound?
sounds great.
Okay. So are we?
So it's yes, going.
It's going.
Yeah.
It's going now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Start your tale.
Oh,
Well, should we
very
introduce him?
difficult.
We didn't get that. We didn't get the introduction.
We could do that later.
Okay, is that okay? Yeah.
It's over 50 years when Arapahoe Acres was developed. Ed Hawkins was a good builder, one of the best in Colorado. And what I mean by best is that he was a contemporary builder, a modern builder who appreciated contemporary architecture. To work with a builder who appreciated contemporary work was a pleasure. You didn't have to argue or convince or beg. It was supposed to be a wonderful cooperation. He bought some land in Englewood. I don't remember the details. All I remember that he and Revere Copper National Organization put us together. They wanted to sponsor a total contemporary subdivision in Colorado, and they wanted to put an architect and a good builder together. And I happened to be the architect who was recommended to be the partner or so-called collaborator. I started working on a master plan. Having lived and been educated in Europe and in England, I came with some background, with some definite principles, ideas about planning, design, which at that time were not very popular in the United States. It was just at the end of the Second World War, veterans coming back from the war. I came with that same boat to the United States. Most of the people on my boat were military people. And the same, about my age. And the ideas what I got in Europe was simple design, simple materials, efficient planning, minimum amount of space for corridors. If you can develop a plan, no corridor at all, that's a good plan. Every square inch of the unit should be useful, utilized. It's a wonderful, strong statement and a very meaningful. And the second principle, which I was strongly in favor because of English background, you don't design housing. You design neighborhoods, communities. You design neighborhoods where children age of 6 and 10 can walk to school, not bus to school. Where mothers and fathers know where the child is when they're not at home, they're at school. School is very similar to home, only it's a home away from home. That's the idea. A school is a home away from home, not a factory. Those principles kept with me, and when we had this over 30 acres to develop, I was thinking in terms of how do we get rid of the grid, of the simple grid which makes every block the same. It was too militaristic. I was interested, a residential development should be for people who live there, not for people who may want to drive through. The idea was to develop a master plan for about 120 or 150 units, single homes, for a neighborhood with a little village green, where maybe a kindergarten could be built for the children who live close by. No street goes straight through. All have privacy. So you force people, even those who are in a hurry, slow down, damn it. Because there's no straight line. Those were the concepts behind the master plan for Ararpahoe Acres. I submitted it to Englewood City Council or the planning department. They were very collaborative. They liked it, although most cities don't like it. Most cities would tell you, quite frankly, that if the fire department will approve your plan, we'll approve it. You know what I mean by that? They want me to take my master plan to the fire department because they're interested in finding the fire in case there's a fire in your neighborhood. So I did another project in Denver where I had to take it to the fire department, but they didn't have a fire department, so they told me, take it to the Denver Fire Department. So I took it to the Denver Fire Department, and it was a charming, sophisticated, educated chair of the fire department who sat down with me for a few minutes, and I told him, I have a plan which I need your approval, because if you don't approve it, the community will not, the planning department will not approve it. And he looked at this plan, and he looked at me, and he said, Gene, have you ever met a fireman? And I said, no, but what has it got to do with my plan? Do you realize that the firemen we hire for a fire department are people like horses with blinders on? If you put a dent in the road, they will miss a fire. What am I supposed to do? To design a development for that mentality? That kind of thinking? No way. I'm not following the grid. I'll never follow the grid because I am thinking about the children who are going to live there. Not the firemen, not the milkmen, not the mailman who comes in once a day and can't find the address. He will find it after the second day. I insisted that to me the most important people to design a development are the people who live there and nobody else. And they approved it. And I came to the conclusion at that time that I am not a person who accepts no for an answer from anybody. And I practiced for almost 50 years in architecture, and I done a lot of work, but I felt that rules and regulations are wonderful for people who don't use their own initiative, their own talent, their own gifts. It's so easy to give in and do whatever everybody wants me to do and follow the rules, the building codes, and you are safe because they will approve anything so long as you follow the rules. I very seldom follow the rules because I believed the rules were written 10, 20 years before and they were outdated the day they were printed. Where do you go from there? Anyhow, let's go back to Arapahoe Acres. At that time, people were building, the general building organizations, the builders were building little tic-tac buildings, little small buildings, all over Englewood, all over Denver, which cost between $4,000 and $10,000 each. All of them looked alike. There was no special design. There were no consideration for orientation. They all fitted nicely into the grid pattern. You had a living room, you had a picture window in the living room looking across the street to another similar house looking into the picture window of another house across the street. You see what I'm talking about? So that was a typical home, and that the same thing was surrounding Arapahoe Acres, same kind of homes. Ed Hawkins and I were talking about looking around what kind of homes are built in the neighborhood. And we were trying to meet the same budget. Build homes for a contemporary modern home not to exceed $10,000. So the first home we designed was a small home, 30 feet by 30 feet, square building, 2-bedroom, 1 floor, no basement, on a piece of land which was 66 feet wide by about 80 feet or 90 feet deep. It was all approved by the city of Englewood. We built it. And we had an open house when it was built. And it was advertised nationally, all over the country, because of that National Copper Association who sponsored the development. I don't know how many, but over 4,000 people came to visit the first one. Furnished it with the most contemporary furniture like this chair, or what you're sitting in. The most modern chairs, tables was used. It fitted that building. Small in scale because the place was small. Open plan. The kitchen, dining room, living room are all tied together. The only privacy was a 2-bedroom and a bathroom. That was separate. The first day, somebody made an offer to Mr. Hawkins that I want to buy this first home I'll make you an offer. I'll pay you $13,500. Although it was advertised that the home will sell for $10,000. Can you imagine? This was my first fight. Hawkins wanted to sell it for what it was offered for, and I said, you agreed to sell it for $10,000. You sell it for $10,000. I said, forget it. I'll sell it for $13,500. That's the price what people are willing to pay for it. Now, today I would have killed him. At that time, I didn't know how to fight it. I was young, inexperienced, beginner. But I learned a lot also. That you win some, you lose some. The first 9 homes were sold the same week or the same 10 days before being built. The first home which was sold was immediately contract signed for the next 9 homes. And it was known that the project is just selling like hotcakes. And the whole project was sold the minute it was built. There was not ever any vacancy. And the same is today. You look at that development today, and it's in excellent shape. So contemporary homes actually today are pretty hot, especially those which were built 50 years ago. We read it all over the country. They are trying to buy them or preserve them or paying a lot of money for them. As compared to what's being built today. What we call the monster homes. Or I don't even know, everybody's naming them differently. Buildings which are so big and so costly, some of them are 8,000 square feet for a couple with one child. A kitchen which costs maybe $30,000. Nobody cooks at home. Nobody eats at home. And this is what's going on today. All over, not in Englewood or Littleton or Denver, everywhere. I feel we are missing something serious. That there's very few people today who are have simpler values. You can have a wonderful life without living in a 10,000 square feet home, without a book or a piece of music or good friends, or hardly ever traveling or seeing anything else. I find it really sad. So many big homes being built today everywhere, and they're empty, soulless, no purpose, going nowhere. I think I've said enough.
Enough.
Can you give us a little bit more information about your site plan? It's such a contrast. You described the houses on the perimeter, how they look into each other's windows, and how they're just oriented toward the street and nothing else. What kind of considerations, how were you thinking in terms of siting the individual houses and dealing with the topography and the lot that you found there?
I appreciate your comment. That helps me a little bit to go back. That applied to almost any home. I did not design many homes. I designed, as I said before, neighborhoods, communities. A home by itself, I always felt it's a lonely thing. I want a home to have a neighbor, a good neighbor. A home can be a neighbor, a building can be a neighbor if it relates to the next home. I don't want to sort of, in scale, can you imagine a small house here and a three-story building next to it, or ignoring the neighbor. So you have to take into account the orientation. We have a wonderful view in that location to the mountains. We have so much sun in Colorado to make use of the sun. Since the lots were small, like 6 foot wide, you can put, like today, the garage is the most important thing in front. And everybody drives into the garage and cuts up the lawn. I try to put the drive to the garage together. So instead of cutting up the lawn in small pieces, I put the neighbors, here is a drive-in for one home, and next to it the drive-in for that home. So the open space was much larger between two buildings. That was one element to preserve, so that the green in front of the home is so much larger than actually belonging to one person. We built very few fences. The only fences we built is at the backyard for privacy. That's one thing I loved about when I first came to the United States, is that unlike England, everybody's home is his castle. I felt somehow what I liked about America, that you don't have fences at the front, which is spacious, trusting, open. It always gave me the feeling of freedom. These little fences, every home is seclusion, privacy, yes, but what about the larger picture, that you are part of a community? Why don't you trust your neighbors? Why don't you get along with them? Architects can help to create it. And that was my first, I remember I visited a community in Philadelphia. I was so impressed. No fences in front. All open, beautiful green, landscaped. All these developments are together. So that was a plus and a very nice thing. Anyhow, the home sort of, the rules were always saying you have to have a 25-foot setback. I didn't see any logic to 25 feet. Why not 30? Why not 10? Why not 5? A little variety. So when you put one building 25 feet, why not have the other one only 10 feet? Have a little variety going in and out, so the buildings are not lined up like a regiment. Line up and salute. More freedom, because quite frankly, I loved the freedom of what America stood for. And it had to be expressed in architecture. There's so many other elements in creating a community. For instance, I showed on my master plan about 2 acres of open space in Arapahoe Acres. I'm really sorry to even talk about it, but As soon the project became so successful financially for this wonderful, capable, talented builder, he decided to build 8 or 10 more homes on that open space. And that little village green disappeared. So you see again, that, and again I don't want to use it as a criticism, but certain idealism you don't compromise with. When you have an idea that you want to do, then you follow it, you respect it, and you carry it through. And I know quite well that Mr. Hawkins financially was very successful with that project. And bless him, he deserved it. He did an excellent job. The best anybody could have done in Colorado at that time. But there's certain, enough is enough. Don't overdo it. And I was too young to fight it.
One question I had is, how did you convince the city of Inglewood, or what was the purpose of moving the utility easement in between the backyards of the houses? Because you go down the street and where's the city of Denver, you know, right? You know what I'm speaking of? Like how you guys moved the telephone poles and the sewer is in the back of the house.
Well, it's just what happens sometimes with the city, that if you're lucky if you find a person who's on your side, who believes that it's a more, sometimes we bury those utilities. Sure, originally the public service was willing to do it at no extra cost. Now they're charging for some reason. Maybe they're economically not feasible, but 50, 40 years ago they used to do it free. You don't need those big poles all over the place. It can be buried, especially in Colorado where the weather sometimes can be quite severe. Maintenance is simpler if it's buried in pipes or trenches. A lot of repair. A lot of people come out, trees fall over it, repair and maintenance, constantly. You've got to think in long terms, that it's not for a year, but 2 or 50 or 100 or 75 years. In the long run, if you're not cluttering the environment, why provide landscaping if suddenly you have all these poles for telephone poles and wires hanging all over the place? You try to clean it up. In some places you can manage doing it, and without extra cost to it, especially when you have 30 acres. If you have 1 or 2 homes, it's a little bit more difficult. But when you deal with a large piece, like for instance, I did another development in Arapahoe County called Orchard Hills, 150 acres. I have a green belt connecting all the homes. You can walk out, everybody it's walking into a park. So the green belt belongs to every home. You walk out of your home at the back and you have a so-called green belt connecting all the homes. So the road is in front of you, the green belt is behind you.
How about your project on Lyda Street? Like the housing development, what's it called?
On ILIF,
Oh, ILIP, excuse me.
your DU project.
Malai housing.
Well, you got your park there.
That's right. I've got
Right.
2 acres I have 2 acres village green with an amphitheater. Every 4th of July, the whole community got together, all the children. I wish I could show you some pictures. We had our own party. Every 4th of July, all the children, neighborhoods came in to our little community, only 32 homes. And those homes were built, the Hawkins homes were built for $8.80 a square foot. The Denver University homes, where I lived for 12 years, built for $7.60 a square foot. Today, that carpet would cost $10 a square foot, just a carpet. What happened to costs?
Yeah.
But at Orchard Hills, 150 acres, one home per acre, we put all the lines underground. There was not a shrub on that land. When we bought the land, I thought I was, and that's a true picture. When we bought, I was part of buying that land with a group of people. When we bought that land, I honestly believe we are closer to Kansas than to Denver. There was nothing in the whole area. We bought it because we could not afford more than $1,000 an acre. So we had to go as far as we could. We bought that land and we started developing it. And we started landscaping it. Not little trees like that. Trees 10 foot, 12 foot high. Now you go there today, it's a forest. What bothers me right now, we over landscaped it because I wanted everybody to have a good view to the mountains. They don't even see their neighbors.
And what would you say? Did you, like, coming from Europe, did you have a lot of influences? Let's say, coming here, like Maholy Naj was here, Mies van der Rohe, or was it some of maybe the modern in California, Schindler houses and the movement that was going on in Southern California, the Eichler stuff. Were these any kind of influences for you being a young architect coming from Europe, or Frank Lloyd Wright?
Yeah, what was your education? Who were you looking at?
My education is, first of all, I got a scholarship because my parents couldn't afford anything. So I had a scholarship to go to Prague. Very good university, very old university. I got my first education there. And 1 year before the war, of just sheer luck, 1 year before the war started, I was a Czech student, graduate, exchanged for an English student. An English student came to Prague and I went to England. I did my graduate work in England and never went back to Czechoslovakia. War broke out. I stayed in England for 10 years. My first 4 years in England, I was in Cambridge. Very good school of architecture. I was asked to teach at the same time while I took my master's in English, civic architecture. Civic architecture means buildings built together, a composition. Like you don't build one building, but you build all the buildings together and they relate to one another. You create an environment of the buildings. Respect one building and another. Relationships. It's like composing music almost. I was lucky I had 3 outstanding professors in England. One was Sir Patrick Abercrombie, great English architect, planner. Another one was A.E. Richardson, Sir Richardson, an architect. Actually, this was only the 2. About the Prague, I can't remember many because it was, first of all, I was too young. was too anxious to keep my scholarship, so all I did was work hard to keep. I didn't pay anything, and all I had to do was keep my grades. If I would have gone down to a B grade, I would have lost my scholarship. So I worked like a dog to keep my good grades from year to year to year to stay in school without paying any money. So there's another little story, just by the way. By the time when I came to England, and a wonderful group of church people came to see me and asked me to come and give a talk to their church after services about Czechoslovakia. I can't never forget that. And I said to myself, oh my God, I can't say anything about Czechoslovakia. I don't know much about my country I came from because I was so busy in architecture. So can you imagine? I went to the Cambridge Library to read up about Czechoslovakia in order to give a talk to these old people. I'm ashamed even to admit that.
That's okay. We won't take the tape to Czechoslovakia.
So this is what I did. I had to brush up on my lack of knowledge about the country I came from. In an English library, can you imagine, made notes of what Czechoslovakia stood for and so forth, because I was, and what I remember is I was a hard-working student from every day, working very hard to keep my scholarship going. But England was sort of a relief, because in England you meet a guy like Richardson, an old gentleman of the old class, who noticed when he gave lectures. He was a Georgian professor, lived in the Georgian period, dressed like a Georgian, not architect, but nobleman, came to the class like an actor, like Frank Lloyd Wright. Talked, everybody enjoyed his speeches, his lectures. People from all over came to listen to him. And because my English was so poor and so limited, that I always sat in the front row to listen to some of his speeches and made notes. And he one day must have noticed me that I don't get everything he's telling us. So after a lecture he came over, and this 65-year-old gentleman, he looks at me and said, Mr. Sternberg, you must have difficulties in taking notes during my lecture. I would like to help you. Would it be all right? Would you like to come and have tea at my place every Tuesday at 4 o'clock, and I'll go over the lecture just for you? Now here is an old professor, tremendous reputation, busy, big office, comes to a little guy from a foreign country, offers to instruct me privately at his office when tea is serviced. You know, tea time in England, everybody has tea at 4 o'clock. I'll never forget him. Never forget him. This is the man who did schools, hospitals, churches, housing, all over the empire. New Zealand, Australia, Canada. At the time he was this little guy. That's my background. I was fortunate to have people like that around me.
And what about the architectural influences?
The architecture influences really, the Prague influence was because of the Bauhaus movement. The Bauhaus movement was a beginning of influence all Central Europe, and later on came to England, because a lot of German architects escaped Hitler, went to England, and brought the most talented, gifted German architects came to England and to the United States. And they were the one who organized the Bauhaus School. So suddenly the Bauhaus School became international. Harvard, Yale, Princeton, all those schools adopted some of his studies. And that was my beginning.
Was there any architect in particular from the Bauhaus that you liked?
Oh, I liked Bauer.
Ah, right on.
I loved him. I loved his work. Even today, when I look at one of the magazines, anything he did was romantic and modern. And then I just loved Frank Lloyd Wright's work. Although Frank Lloyd Wright didn't care for the Bauhaus. I tried to do some work with Corbusier's brutalic architecture. It expressed some feeling, something in me that I used it several times. Most people didn't like it.
What feeling?
Beckman?
What feeling?
Oh, feeling of I felt it's a strong statement. I always believe that a good architect ought to have courage enough to experiment, even if the people around him don't care for. It's like a doctor, or a lawyer, or a professor. Don't be timid just because the environment around you is not ready. If an architect is unwilling to experiment with new ideas, new material, new shapes and forms, who will? And to me, I was teaching later on, I felt it's my duty, my responsibility to give courage to the students to go ahead. You are the future, damn it. I always felt so strongly that a school should educate that future generation and the public at the same time. Otherwise, there is no future. Otherwise, we just repeat and repeat and repeat the same thing. Look at medicine. I became involved in health, in hospitals, in medical clinics, in laboratories. If you listen to a doctor, or what the new hospital should be, you go nowhere, because they don't know much about our field. So you go all over the place, like you go all over Europe and find out who built recently a hospital in Finland, in Sweden, in England, in Germany. Let's see what they are doing. If we are not doing the proper things, only to find out. I'll give you an example that somewhere in Europe, after the war, I don't know exactly what country, whether it was Sweden or Finland or Germany, that a group of architects were hired by the country to build the best big 1,000-bed hospitals. They hired 2 American architects, 2 British architects, 2 Swedish architects. They put a team of 8 architects together and told them, anything you want, any site you want, anything you want, you are free to select a site. Forget about cost. Build us a hospital which is for the future. These architects got together and told the government, we got an idea. The only thing we want you is let us build a hospital ignoring all your rules and regulations in the country. No rules in the country should apply to this one hospital. What does he tell you? it tells you that all those rules are a handicap. It's holding you back. It's costly, it's wasteful. But these foreign architects were able to tell the government, leave us alone. We build you a hospital, and I got that idea. Because Denver General Hospital, when I was asked to design it, I begged the city, you don't need 500 bed hospital. You need more intensive care units. Most people will be cured better being treated at home. Today, the whole medical profession feel the same way. This is what I'm talking about, looking ahead. And who are my teachers? People of this kind.
You talk so strongly about the value of architectural education. Can you tell us a little bit about the program that you helped put together at DU, which was why you came here originally?
Well, you know, it's amazing how much you learn if you teach. First of all, you realize how little you know. And then I was fortunate that my students were grown-up men like me, coming back from a war. These were veterans, like you are. All just came back from a war, ready to do anything. Capable, talented, committed, work like dogs. Here in Denver, we had a new school where we combined architecture and planning as one subject. They are not two subjects, one subject. Planning and architecture are one and only one subject. And the school was giving a degree in architecture planning. So when you got a certificate from our school here, you had a degree in two subjects. But, you know, you got a piece of land, it's part of planning. To locate the building on site is planning. Same as building a city or a neighborhood or community, it's all planning. And where you put the building, how you relate all that elements are all planning and architecture. You're down divided. Today, it's all divided. Interior is separate. Landscaping is separate. Master planning is separate. Mechanical is separate.
Hello.
Electrical is separate.
Hey, Barbara.
Hi Diane, how you doing?
Good.
So today it's all cut to pieces. I was fortunate to have an office where we did everything in my office. Every phase of planning and design was in my office. I had good people in my office. Anyhow, going back to this education, I had such capable people, such good people who were willing to put everything they had in being committed architects for life. Give you a little example. I had calls because some of them were married and some of them had even children. I had calls from their wives. Mr. Sternberg, Bob hasn't been at home for the last 3 nights. Do you know where he is? And I said, who am I talking to? Bob Mackesy or whatever her name was. I said, do you know what your husband is doing? He's working on a project which has to be finished by the end of this week. And he's working day and night. He's sleeping in the studio. I am there with him. But he needs to be at home. We got children. I said, can't you take care of the children for a couple of days more? And I said, now, look here, he's got to be he wants to be an architect. help him to be a good architect. Mr. Sternberg, what do you want? You want to cause us a divorce? Now, these kind of things happened in that school. We were willing to even undergo a divorce if necessary. If necessary, to make him stay there, finish his work, commit himself to be a good architect. Without this commitment, he will never make it. And we survived it. We were so involved in this. When we developed a project, it wasn't one idea or two ideas. We insisted on a dozen ideas. Put it on a wall, let's tear it apart. Let's see what's wrong with this one, with that one, with that one. And that's how you learned. And that was the backbone of the school. Commitment, hard work, and a love for it. A genuine love for it.
When DU had an architecture program, when you were there, Wright actually came to town for a student exhibition that your students put on. Did you meet him at that time?
Yeah. Friend Lloyd Wright, dear friend Wright. I met him a couple of times here in Denver. The students were so active. The students invited Frank Lloyd Wright because we tried to learn something about that man who was so gifted and loved and all over the globe. Do you realize that Frank Lloyd Wright was honored in Sweden, in England, in Russia, in Japan, you name it, every country, but not in the United States. The only country which did not honor him the AIA gold medal, or whatever that is, the top honor, was the United States. Because he was not a joiner. He did not believe in I don't know how to even call it, but he did not believe that big organizations create anything good. Usually the mediocre people end up there running it or showing it. It's like show what happened here in Denver. One little column in the papers after 16,000 architects came to town. Who's running the show? See what I'm talking about? So the students put up, we studied every plan Frank Lloyd Wright created, floor plans, studied and made large floor plans, copied his flat plan. And we had a big exhibition room, I would say as big as 3 sides of this room, white walls. We put up all his sketches. The students prepared sketches of his work, copying, photographs and so forth. And we invited him to the opening of the exhibit. And he came. And he gave a talk. And he came twice, I think, to the school. And that also uplifted the morale of the school. He didn't visit many schools because he did not believe, he was not educated himself. He was educated by his 2 top people he worked for in Chicago, Sullivan, who taught him how to be a great architect, and his mother, who taught him how to play with blocks. So that was his background. But he also learned a lot about reading a lot. I've got a number of books of his. Some of them 50, 40, 60, 70 years old. There's no architect I know of in the United States who ever wrote that much and talked that much. To inspire, a lot of it is good a lot of it is just talk, you know. But he had a certain mission. I call it, he was a missionary really in architecture, and that's a blessing, really a blessing.
Was Jerry Diane, excuse me, was Jerry Diane one of your students?
Yes, Jerry was one of our students from the East Coast. I think he came from Boston or that part of the country. He's a very nice fellow, very good student. He was married to a lady by the name of Elba, or was her name. She died later on. I think I haven't heard from him for a long, long time. I think he remarried again. I was just told by some other students. But he left Colorado. He worked with Hawkins. I don't know under what condition. I don't remember whether I recommended him or Hawkins just got hold of him. I have no idea. I don't remember. You know, it's difficult to remember details like that. So often I feel so ashamed that people come look at me and said, like here is an architect in Evergreen, a man by the name of Alan Fredrickson in Evergreen. I belong to Service Club in Evergreen, and I was introduced to him one day, and we shook hands. He belonged to the same Service Club, and he looked at me again, and he looks at me and said, "Don't you remember me?" I said, "I'm sorry, I don't. Am I supposed to know you?" He looks at me again, "Don't you remember me?" I didn't remember him at all. "I worked for you, damn it!" He worked in my office. And now what do you say?
Sorry.
He was a good man, actually. He done a lot of good work. A couple of nice jobs here in Evergreen. But now and so you see, things are happening.
How do you feel about Arapahoe Acres becoming National Landmark status? How do you feel about that?
I think it's what you people have done, the people who live there.
But you, how do you?
What I'm just trying to say,
yeah.
all of you the people who live there are willing, first of all, spend all that time to get it accomplished. I think it's wonderful. Because the amount of work gone into it, number one, but also this is a period where we have experimented with new ideas, which is not going on today. If I would be teaching today, I would take my class every year to sit there and study the plans, each building, what should be done today, plus to learn from it. I would insist that every class from School of Architecture goes there and learn from it, compared to what the rest of the building industry does. That's what they done. That's what you did. That's what you did. So I'm very proud of it. I'm just delighted they accomplished it. I wish I had done nothing to deserve it.
Except build the buildings.
Well, but,
The houses.
Normally those buildings would have been torn down. The land became more valuable. The land under each of those buildings are 10 times more valuable, financially talking, than the buildings on it today. You can sell every one of those sites for, I would say, 10 times or 5 times for what the building cost.
We're going to edit this part of the interview out.
Well, people, I don't think they have the right to sell it now. Do they?
And the experimentation with materials, like when you first were developing Arapahoe Acres, what do you think? Like you really experimented with the first show home, and
Thank you for reminding me. That's what I meant to talk about. Two things or three things happened there on the first house in Arapahoe Acres. First of all, never before, anywhere in Colorado, was cavity walls built. 2 layers of 2-inch brick with 2-inch cavity in between. So that if you have a brick surface outside, you have same brick surface inside. That's number one. Well insulated, permanent, inside and outside the same material, which is honesty in material.
keep going.
That's all.
Oh, it's off. We have to get another tape.